Peugeot has finally brought a hybrid version of the 3008 mid-size SUV to Australia. But is this thing a RAV4 killer? Well, let's find out. So while the word hybrid might generally conjure up frugality and slow, uninvolving driving experiences, that's not looking like the case for the 3008 because it's got 222 kilowatts of power from its 1.6 litre turbocharged engine and its 2 electric motors, and it's got a 0 to 100 claim of 5.9 seconds. That's the fastest midsize SUV in this sort of price range without stepping into a product from Mercedes-AMG, BMW M, or something like an Audi SQ5. The clincher though, this thing costs nearly $80,000. $79,990 before on-road costs, in fact, with an extra $1,050 for this example because it's got a lovely pearl white paint job. So is it really worth $30,000 more than something like a Toyota RAV4 to get a 50 kilometer electric only range from a 13.2 kilowatt hour battery? Well, that's what we're going to find out in today's review. We're also going to evaluate how this car drives to see if the 400 kilograms worth of electric gubbins on top of the normal 3008 GT with a 1.6 litre turbocharged engine ruins this car's experience, because that is an awful lot of weight to add to a mid-sized SUV. But of course, if you have any thoughts on the Peugeot 3008, let me know in the comment section down below. And if you haven't done so already, we'd also love it if you could hit subscribe. Now, design is subjective, but I think you'll have a hard time arguing with me that this is one of the most dramatic mid-size SUVs in the segment, and I happen to think it looks absolutely fantastic. I love the way that it looks like a robotic cat's claw has been dragged from the grille to the side of the car and then sliced down. I think it looks really, really great. The only car in my book that challenges this car is the slightly more elegant Volkswagen Tiguan R-Line, but you can let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Now, in this range-topping variant, the GT Sport, you can just get a 1.6 turbo petrol engine, which also gets the same black pack as this car and black grille, and you also get the same 19-inch black alloy wheels. But you can tell this is the $80,000 hybrid from a little hybrid 4 badge and the fact that it has 2 filler caps, one for petrol and one for electrons. So the 3008 looks really dramatic outside, and thankfully that's mirrored inside. Though not overly dramatic, it just has a really nice level of thought that's gone into designing this cabin. You can really tell, but the big question is, does it feel like 80 grand's worth of car? Well, there's certain things such as this Napa leather upholstery and the really nice soft touch bits and this sort of wood looking trim here and a general air of quality that do feel $80,000. But there are other things that just don't. For example, I've got a massage function, fully electric adjustability, and 2-position memory for my driver's seat. Yet the passenger seat has manual adjust except for tilt, which feels, I don't know, really penny pinching to me. The other sort of things are, yes, this 12.3-inch digital driver's display looks pretty crisp, but the navigation on the central screen looks a bit pixelated. At least you've got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto that you can plug in via a cable down here to make up for that. Now, you do just have one USB-A port. You've also got a 12-volt socket down there, though, and wireless charging for a smartphone. You've got this cute little storage area here, which is good for odds and ends, or if you want to store a phone there, that works nicely. 2 little cup holders here, and below the center armrest, we've got a seriously deep bin in here. You could put, I guess, a small handbag or something like that in there if you needed to, or a couple of water bottles. That brings me on to the fact that you can really easily fit a 1.5 litre or 1.25 litre bottle in the doors alongside another 700ml bottle. So for road trips, this car is going to be absolutely ace. And you're going to be able to customize it even more, because just in front of the digital driver's display, you've got this really nice little flat portion here where you could stick your deity of choice on to accompany you on your road trips, if you wish to. And also, that brings me to the driving position, which is funky in a French car, but yeah, this is sort of Peugeot's thing, where you've got the small little tiny leather-appointed steering wheel set below that driver's display, and I actually find it to work really well. The seats are super comfortable too, and I can adopt a nice driving position. Though, if you're much taller than me, you may struggle with the standard fit panoramic sunroof on this 3008 GT Sport PHEV, because headroom is a little bit at a premium. But, you know, that's going to be something that you'll need to test out for yourself. The rear seat of the 3008 GT is actually pretty spacious, considering this car's 4,447mm length puts it at the shorter end of the mid-size SUV segment here in Australia. I've still got decent knee room behind my own position, little bit of extra toe room, and pretty respectable headroom considering I'm 6'2" and we've got this lovely panoramic glass sunroof. Now the real question is, does this car feel its asking price inside? Because as you might have caught, we did a whole mid-size SUV mega test with range-topping variants. So what does this 3008 offer above those cars? Not that much, to be honest. Like, you've got these nice seats back here, the same upholstery as in the front, decent under thigh support and a nicely relaxed backrest, but they don't really offer any movement at all, in fact. And you don't have heating on the outboard seats or anything like that. The materials back here, while they do look pretty okay, they are actually scratchy plastics, though you do have this nice soft backing for this seat here, which is a classy touch. It means stuff won't rattle around when it's in the mat pockets. You got vents as well, 12-volt socket, 2 USB ports, and this nice sort of stitching here which carries throughout the whole interior and the floor mats and also up front as well. And then this focal little flourish here to let you know that this car's got a pretty decent quality 10-speaker sound system. But there's nothing more that it adds to the midsize SUV experience than a $55,000 range-topping RAV4 or Kia Sportage or Hyundai Tucson, and I think that's where it kind of hurts a little bit for me, this car. It doesn't move the game on in terms of interior equipment, but hopefully when we get it out for a drive, things will change. I had no problem fitting the baby seats to the back of the 3008. It's quite wide back here as well, so I can easily sit between the front and the rear-facing child seats. As for the ISOFIX ports, they're just there, hidden behind the fabric, so there's no clips to lose, and I think that's a good idea, but let me know what you reckon in the comments section. So here around the back is where the 3008 really has a little bit of an edge over its bigger brother, the 5008 that you and I went along to check out a couple of weeks ago, because it has this really nice fastback body style and the proportions just look a little bit better. The wheelbase is more correct looking for the length of the car, and I think that works, but you can let me know because it's all personal preference. I think it's generally a handsome vehicle too. Really nice little running lights at the back here. But let's pop that standard electrically operated tailgate open, which you would expect at 80 grand, and we find 591 litres of boot space. I'll flash up right now how many of the soccer balls we managed to fit in here to see where it stacks up against its competitors. But yeah, it's a fairly smart boot in some senses. You've got little remote tabs to flip the seats down. That's pretty cool. And you've also got a little bit of extra storage under here, though I will point out that that storage is not big enough to fit Peugeot's charging gubbins in. And weirdly, inside the charging gubbins, you get a free set of gardening gloves. Not sure exactly what all that's about, but yeah, I wish Peugeot had just thought about that a little bit harder and popped that under the boot. Of course, because the batteries are under the boot floor there and the rear seats as well, you don't get any spare tyre in this 3008 GT with a plug-in hybrid. Every 3008 needs to be serviced every 12 months or 20,000 Ks, and over 5 years of ownership, it's going to cost you $3,108 in cap price service trips to the dealer. As for insurance, over the last 12 months, the median budget direct customer paid $1,002 to comprehensively insure their new Peugeot 3008. Now, your premium may vary based on things that insurers take into account, such as your driving history, where you live, and whether or not you garage the car. Fuel consumption for plug-in hybrid vehicles is actually quite a complex topic because it depends on so many variables. Now, Peugeot's ADR rated fuel consumption figure for this 3008 is 1.6 litres per 100 kilometres in the combined cycle. Now that starts with a fully charged battery. And in our testing, when the battery did have some charge in it, that was pretty repeatable in urban environments, with electric only running at about 29.9 kilowatt hours per 100 Ks. But we did take the 3008 on a longer run after charging the battery up, about 300 Ks of driving total. And that saw the consumption figure climb to 5.1 litres per 100 Ks, which is about the same you'd see from something like a Toyota RAV4 series parallel hybrid. So it's still more efficient than 1.6 litre turbocharged option, but it's not that much more efficient than a regular hybrid, despite the extra costs if you don't keep it charged. Now, let's talk about juicing this thing up as well, because it is a little bit awkward. It's difficult to use public charge points in this vehicle because it only takes 3.7 kilowatts of AC charging. That means it takes 5.5 hours to juice up this 13.2 kilowatt hour battery to provide roughly a 50 kilometre range. And Frankly, that's a really long time to get 50 kilometers of range. Of course, if you have the provisions to do that at home or work, then this car might suit what you want to do. But for me, living in somewhere that doesn't have the provision to charge at home, or working somewhere with a charger, it doesn't quite fit my lifestyle, unfortunately. But you can let me know what you think in the comment section down below. So, the Peugeot 3008 plug-in hybrid is a surprising one because it has all of the usual Peugeot features, like that plush ride that I'll get into in a minute, but it's sort of headlined by this crazy powertrain, like 222 kilowatts of power, 520 newton meters of torque. Like, that's a lot of power for a mid-size SUV, especially one that doesn't wear any sort of sporty badging, or at least traditionally Germanic sporty badging. It's just a Peugeot normal product. Now, the way it makes that power and torque is through a 1.6 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that's found in the regular car, but on top of that, we've got a pair of electric motors. They're each about 80 kilowatts on the front and the rear axle. And what that means is this car's also all-wheel drive. So all of that combined gives it a really fast 0 to 100 kilometer an hour claimed sprint of 5.9 seconds, which is like hot hatch territory. It's faster than a Golf GTI. It's faster than my Hyundai i20N long term. You know, it's proper rapid, and that speed really kicks in around the city. And you can really, you know, surprise people off a set of lights in this car. It's pretty impressive, actually. And I should add to that, the 8-speed ACE torque converter automatic in this vehicle is also pretty well tuned. I think it feels like it works better with this plug-in hybrid system than with the normal engine, because the normal engine only has about 240 newton meters of torque or thereabouts. And so there's not that much grunt normally on offer in a 3008, but this really, with its extra electric motors, gives that instant mule-like kick to this car, and it's quite addictive and definitely could surprise some passengers. The other thing that will surprise passengers is when you tip it into a couple of corners and the rear end rotates, and it just feels like such a holistic package. And then if you get it right and enough trail braking going on, then you can really lean on that all-wheel drive system. And I've actually had a little bit of power oversteer in this thing, which is an insane thing to say for a Peugeot mid-size SUV, but it just goes to show how deep Peugeot's engineering nous goes. They just know how to make a car handle. But it's not like Peugeot sacrificed handling for ride comfort, because this thing is one of the best riding vehicles in its segment. Now, I really wish we got this car along to our mid-size SUV mega test that we did a couple of months back, and if you haven't seen that video, I'd suggest you queue it up after this one, because I think it would have really been an interesting car to have in that, but Peugeot didn't have one to supply us, which is a bit of a shame. Certainly the plug-in hybrid would have absolutely kicked butt at the slalom, because it would have rocketed out of the end of that. Anyway, back to this car, and I guess if I have one complaint about the way it drives, because everything else is so good, it's the brake pedal. There's a weird changeover when you swap from regenerative braking forces through the pedal to caliper actually biting into the spinning rotor, and it sort of erodes a little bit of confidence. You've got to step on it quite hard, but once you get your head wrapped around that, it's not so bad, and certainly it's not a bad thing in the city at all. It's mainly when you're out here on a country road trying to explore the limits of this car. But yeah, no, it just feels like such a polished, holistic package, this 3008 GT. It just would be a joy to drive absolutely every day, and even the 19-inch alloy wheels don't cause any undue harshness around town. Urban environments are killer in this thing. It does have 205 50 section 19-inch Michelin e-Primacy tyres, which offer great grip, and I think they're some of the reason it is still a very comfortable car in urban environments. Now, safety-wise, it does have a decent list of kit, but it's definitely not up there with the best of the cars in this segment, like a Kia Sportage GT line or Volkswagen Tiguan. It feels a little bit sort of half generation behind those vehicles. You've got AEB with pedestrian and cyclist detection in low light. You've got blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, and an adaptive cruise control system with lane keeping and lane centering assist, which actually works better than I expected. But you know, the holistic package doesn't quite extend all the way to the safety features. That said, it's still a 5-star ANCAP rated car, and yeah, it's just so serene, this car. It's got plenty of power when you need it, but when you want it to fade into the background and roll around in electric power, it can do that. You know, we're cruising along on a stretch of road here and the engine's switched off. It's just recouping energy to the batteries and using that to run the AC and everything. So it's a really interesting package, this 3008. I just think that $80,000 asking price might be a little bit too steep. So $80,000 is an awful lot of money to spend on a Peugeot. It's also a pretty expensive vehicle in its segment, where cars like the RAV4 Cruiser are about $55,000. But does that mean you shouldn't buy this car? Not really, because it has a really unique blend of performance, excellent driving characteristics out on the open road, a lovely ride, and a pretty plush feeling cabin, on top of the fact that you can go 50 kilometers doing 0 emissions. So that is a unique blend of attributes, but again, at $80,000, speaking of that 0 emissions thing, you could just buy a full EV. So you can let me know in the comment section down below whether you reckon the 3008 GT plug-in hybrid is a good choice, and whether you like that unique blend of attributes, or if you choose something else. While you're down there leaving your opinion, we'd also love it if you could hit subscribe if you hadn't done so already. And as always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.